So let's talk about putting it all together. So we're going to get to work on a fun little exercise where we're going to break you out into teams, and we're going to work on an exercise in which you're going to need to come up with a game plan for utilizing the different features that we talked about and implementing them in a business scenario. Okay? So the first scenario is right here. And this is a lab. It doesn't require any computer work really, although you can check your sites. But so Universal Containers has determined that open positions should be visible to all users, but closed positions should be visible to recruiters, hiring managers, and approvers only. Only recruiters and their managers should be able to add sharing to a position. Okay? So we have some requirements surrounding record level access, and we have a bunch of questions that are associated with meeting those requirements. Okay? So what I'd like you to do is let's work on exercise 4-1. It's also a little bit more, it's also in your books. You can, I think it's roughly the same text, a little bit more. And what I'd like to do is split you up into groups. Okay? So how about John, Kevin, and Roger, you can be a group. And then Murat, Lyra, Mauricio, maybe you can be a group. Talon, Raj, Leah, you can be a group. And then that leaves us 4 people here, super group. So Carol, Chris, Anu, and Chris number 2. Chris number 3, actually. Okay? So let's allocate. We'll basically spend about 10 minutes discussing this. So please work as a group, discuss a solution. And then what I'll do is I'll kind of call on some different groups to find out what you recommend should be done. Okay? Okay, so let's, I'm gonna collect some input from, we have 4 groups, right? So what I'm going to do is ask for some input. Maybe we can open up this discussion to the entire group. Okay. So the first question was, what should the org-wide default for positions be? Now, what do you think? Taking a look at our scenario up there, what do you think the org-wide default should be?
Private.
What do we got? So we got private, public read-only.
Yeah, we said private,
don't worry about being right or wrong.
No, we said private, but I have also another thought that maybe we should. We were discussing at the end.
Yeah.
Maybe we should give them all in the beginning and then try to restrict later. Because when we give private, we couldn't find the real solution.
Okay.
During the discussions.
All right.
But we couldn't have time for the
What about this side? What level of access do you think the org-wide
We
default
went back
should be?
and forth because first we thought private, make it real restricted, and then try to use sharing to open it
Yeah.
up, but then we can't do
Okay.
it based on value. So then we switched the other way, saying, okay, we have to be open, and then we have to find a way to restrict it.
Yeah.
So, but then that's where we got, our time was trying to figure out how to
Okay.
make it based on the closed type to make it restricted.
Yeah. So I'm hearing a couple of haven't decided on something yet. And then we got 1 public read-only and 1 private. What's the private argument? Let me hear the pro-private argument.
Because when going through that workflow on an earlier slide, that what is the most restrictive user, and all users should be able to see open positions but not closed positions.
Okay.
So that put us straight away to private.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So that's correct. So we have the killer is there's the word only at the end of the first sentence. So it says closed positions should be visible to recruiters, hiring managers, and approvers only. So we have a segment of our population who's not going to see closed positions, right? In that case, then they're our lowest common denominator. And so we do have people who won't be able to see this, so we're going to do private. If we did read only, they would. Or if we did read write, they would have access to the records.
But I thought there were things that overwrite that.
If we set up profiles, in other words, is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, that's what we were trying to debate.
Oh, okay,
how
sure.
Could we use
sure.
record types and profiles?
Yeah.
And
Okay, yeah. So one of the things that we talked about is how you could create a profile in which certain people, or you could restrict read access for objects of that type. Now, why wouldn't that work here? Why? Let's say that we restricted based on profile.
Well, I know because we were in the middle of discussing and trying to create a two record types, maybe for where we want it open, so showing open and closed, and then open and closed for the people who can see closed, and then only having the one record type choice for just the ones who could who can only see open.
Okay.
Or the default profile.
Well, the record types determines the page layout, and it's not really.
It would be the same, but we're trying to figure out how we do it by the value.
Yeah.
It's a value in a pick list.
Yeah.
Status field.
Exactly. And so, you can't really, unless you rely on the people to also update the record type settings. But still, that's not a great solution because it's determining the page layout. And I guess you could create a page layout that doesn't display anything. But then, that's not the best tool. Not the best tool in our arsenal. All right, good stuff. The profile, if we limited based on profile, now that would not work because then the people with that profile wouldn't be able to see the open positions, right? So there's definitely some trade-offs. This is definitely complex, okay? Who should own positions? How about that one? Some thoughts on who should own them? Recruiters. So what gave that away? What was the what are the words that indicated that recruiters?
Able to add sharing to a position.
Able to add sharing. All right. So what is full access? One of the privileges of full access is the ability to share records. So read-write access does not have the ability to share records. So we know that recruiters, in order to be able to share position records, they need to have full level access. Main way we get that is through ownership. Okay. Should grant access using hierarchies be checked? What do you think about that one?
Yes.
And unanimous yes. What leads you to believe that?
And their managers.
And their managers. Very good. So, and their managers. All right. How will recruiters get access to closed positions?
Part of the recruiter's queue.
What's that?
I think because they own it, they have access to it.
They're the owners, right? So very good, yeah. So they're the owners. So based on what we did for who should own positions, the recruiters, the owners, or they're the owners, therefore they'll have access to closed positions.
But with changing the owners, it doesn't ask here, but it will be done by the workflow.
To make the recruiters the owners, or yeah. So if what's kind of missing here is that if it was the hiring managers who defined the positions, either you'd have to have a workflow or the hiring manager would need to change the owner of the position to the recruiters so that they could then take care of the sharing. Yeah. And then how will recruiters get access to open positions? They're the owners. All right. How will all users get access to open positions? So we decided that the org-wide default was private, right?
Apex sharing.
Apex sharing? Let's pretend Apex sharing doesn't exist. That's too easy. Let's just have the developer make it happen.
What about manual sharing as well?
Manual sharing. So manual because one of the things that we can do is remember what's the one default public group?
Organization.
The entire organization. So the thing here is that we have a condition, which is we've identified two subsets of positions, open positions and closed positions. And because we've gone with the private sharing model, because certain users will not be able to see closed positions, that means that we need to have some sort of condition-based mechanism so that we can delineate between open positions and closed positions, right? Now there's two things that are in our arsenal that are looking at that status field. One is to do manual sharing. The user is looking at it. Whoever a recruiter is going, this position's open, therefore I'm going to share it with the entire organization. Or Apex sharing, which was mentioned, in which we could then take a look at that and then write some code to automate that process. Sharing rules don't really work here because sharing rules are based on ownership. The ownership is always our recruiters, so it doesn't really delineate. Sharing rules don't delineate between open positions and closed positions. And then this gets a little bit repetitive, but how will hiring managers get access to closed positions?
Manual sharing.
Manual sharing, and then open, well, they're a part of the entire organization.
Can you use the sharing rule for that?
Let's see here. So,
because recruiters will always own the position.
Uh-huh.
And so whenever they own the position, they should be able to.
Maybe we could, if we didn't have, remember there was that restriction that we had, which was if they are the hiring manager versus if they are a hiring manager. So if this was, if we just said, all right, they're a hiring manager, if that's what our logic was, if you read it, it's not saying one or the other, then we could go, okay, sure, let's create a sharing rule because we know who our hiring managers are. That's a group of people, and let's share it with those people. So, sure.
So at some point, once it became closed, they would have to remember to unshare it.
Yes, yes.
So that's a manual step.
That is true in both manual sharing and Apex sharing. So you don't only have to write the code to open up sharing, you have to write the code to close down sharing. So for instance, one of the things that we do is we take a look at the logic where we go, okay, if the hiring manager is changed, so let's pretend that the hiring manager is changed for a specific position, well, we need to write the logic that goes, okay, I see that the hiring manager has changed, so let's remove sharing for that hiring manager, the old one, and then let's add sharing for the new hiring manager. Apex, the logic, needs to be more than just simply opening up. It also needs to be closing down. Okay? Yes?
If we can apply just a sharing rule for this hiring managers, why can't we apply the same thing for all users as well? Why should we just manually share?
Sorry, can you repeat that? How?
If we are going to use the sharing rules for hiring managers, why can't we apply the same thing for all users as well? Because we are again subset of
the problem is that hiring managers will be able to see both closed and open. So our sharing rule is good when we don't care. it would not be good for all users because in our case, we don't want our sharing rule to execute when it's a closed position. And a sharing rule doesn't have that intelligence. So sorry?
The sharing rule has only read-only and read-write access, right?
No, what I'm referring to is that the sharing rule, the condition to automate the sharing is simply who owns it.
Right.
And it doesn't look and go, okay, I want it to be based on who owns it, but also the fact that it's open. The problem with if we created a sharing rule in that case, we would be sharing with all users both the open and the closed positions because we wouldn't be able to, our sharing rule would not delineate between the two. Now that's okay with our hiring managers because hiring managers have access to both open and closed positions, assuming that our logic is to share with all hiring managers as opposed to the hiring manager.
Right.
So, okay. Yeah.
So you're saying for the open positions, we just do a manual sharing rule?
Yeah.
For each individual position?
Yeah, anytime a position becomes open, they click on Add Sharing. They share it with the entire organization with read-only.
And then when you get to, when it closes, you take that rule back?
Exactly. So then they click on Sharing button. They go and they delete the sharing. There's a delete link.
And then assign it to the hiring managers.
And then they can then open it up to the hiring managers and who are the other people that would want to see that.
And approve it.
Yeah.
In an Apex-less world, of course.
What's that?
In a world that Apex doesn't exist, this should be done.
Yeah. So we're doing right now. We're talking about tools that are in our toolkit right now. But yeah, Apex is definitely something we could use. Yeah. This is kind of a great Apex use case here. So
then for hiring managers and approvers, you create a group access?
Hiring managers, yeah, you could create a public group for hiring managers or, yeah, something like that to automate that.
And approvers?
For approvers, yeah. So I'm not sure why approvers need closed positions, but yeah, creates, something.
So how would you solve that?
Excuse me?
How would you give hiring manager access to closed positions?
You would create a public group of hiring managers and then share it with all your hiring managers.
Oh, and you can do that in the manual sharing. You can.
Yes. Yeah, when you do manual sharing, you can specify a group, not necessarily a specific user. So, and then for the last one, the same thing goes for approvers as it did for hiring managers. Okay? All right.
But the whole exercise assumes that there are only two status, I think.
Open and
closed.
Yeah.
No cancelled, no new.
Well, when it's canceled, it's closed. New, yeah.
Approval.
Yeah, if you put them to the equation again, so then none of them will work. For example, hiring managers get access to closed positions, open positions. The solution that we did get access to cancelled and new also.
Mm-hmm.
So all of them would need Apex if we assume that we have two more statuses.
If you have two more statuses, then
and those sentences stay the same, then nothing would be done without Apex, as far as I see now.
So the two new statuses, what are the? So those are you saying that the hiring manager and the approvers don't have access to those statuses? Is that right, or I don't understand why having two more statuses makes
we said that, for example,
sharing not work.
For hiring managers, or for example, we said that the recruiters are the owners, so they will see everything.
Okay.
But in the sense, it says closed and open.
Yeah.
No cancelled, no new. So by being the owners, they will see cancelled and new positions.
So we want to. You're saying if we had two more statuses and we wanted to have a rule that nobody saw.
No, from those sentences.
Canceled.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Or for example, hiring managers get access to closed positions, open positions. We said that we can do it with the sharing rule because it covers all of them.
Yeah.
But if we have 2 more statuses, it wouldn't cover all of them, so we wouldn't be able to use the sharing rule then.
Yeah, so for that hiring manager one, where we said we could use the sharing rule, if we had other statuses and then we said that hiring managers cannot see records of those other statuses, then we could not apply the sharing rule. But we could still apply the manual sharing. I mean, manual sharing works everywhere. 'Cause it's,
Being manual is...
yeah, I mean, that's the benefit of that, right? So.
If we only have few users,
Yeah.
we're talking about 1,000 users.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
When
Well, that's the
it is-
purpose of public groups, though, is that we can define public groups, right? So that we're not going out and going, okay, you know, we can do, and also roles and subordinates. So it's not like we have to go, okay, now this, you know, these 5 people have access to this or something like that.
That would be more dependent on the record amounts that you have to share versus.
Yeah.
If you have
Yeah.
50,000
Yeah.
positions you have to share, that's when it gets tedious, but
Yeah.
you can share with large groups of people.
Yeah.
And, let that-
Maybe sort of the velocity of these things. How often do they need to be changed, you know? Yeah. So it's, yeah. All right. So let's talk about exercise number 2. All right. Here we're going to restrict access to some sensitive data. And guess what? We get to do another discussion. It's pretty good at the end of the day, though, right? I mean, beats listening to me, right? All right, so restricting data access. Universal Containers has decided that salary information for any position should be visible only to the recruiter, the hiring manager for that position, and the hiring manager's boss. The recruiter should control the salary data. Determine how to store this information to meet the visibility requirements outlined above. Okay. So let's spend some time talking about this. Why don't we break back into our groups, okay, and just kind of discuss this scenario. Maybe we'll take 5 minutes to discuss it. All right. So why don't we discuss this? Let me ask, does any group have some solutions, or maybe you came up with an idea, but then you thought that the idea might not have worked? So whether it's you have a solution or not, what'd you think?
Yeah, we thought about a solution, but then we thought it's not going to work because...
what was that?
Because we thought that there is only, we are not talking about the record, we are talking about the field. So sharing rules will not work here, we thought. So we said that it can only be done by field access.
Yeah.
But field access works with record types and profiles. Record type is out of question, and profiles is not suitable because we are talking about the recruiter, the hiring manager, and its boss. So we cannot create a profile on the run. So it will not again work. So page layout is out of question. So we said, okay, we are not going to do this.
So basically, you told your stakeholder you need to come up with some new requirements.
It's your requirement.
If you don't fit this requirement will fit us.
We don't work with yours.
All right, so Murad, I think you hit on some good stuff. I want to correct one thing that you said, which was there's not. You were implying that field level security and record types go hand in hand, and they're really independent of each other. So field level security is one thing, and record types are another thing. Okay, so field level security is independent of page layouts. It also works with reports. It also works with the Web Services API. That's one thing. It can affect page layouts because if we're not making it visible via field level security, it will never appear in the page layout. Another separate thing are record types and page layouts. Record types determine which page layout is utilized when displaying a record. But you're on the right track. So you walked down the path, which was, you would think that this is field level security because our requirement is oriented towards specific fields. It is not oriented towards an object type, right? And so field level security seems like the obvious solution, but field level security has a big problem. In this case, it says, decide that salary information should, for any position should be visible only to the recruiter, and then it says the hiring manager for that position. So the problem is that field level security is applied on a profile basis. So if we say, you know, a hiring manager has access, well then all the hiring managers will have access. It's not just that that hiring manager. So okay, did anyone come up with some other solutions or sneak a peek at the? Okay, so the solution for this is to take the salary information and to place it on another custom object. So by placing salary information on another object and then relating the salary information to the position, we can now define separate levels of access control for the salary information that are independent of the position. Okay? So what would the relationship have to be between the salary and the position in order to keep those separate? It has to be a lookup, exactly. Can't be master detail. Because of master detail, then you're inheriting whatever you had up above. Okay? So by creating a lookup relationship, we gain the ability to have independent access control, record level access, for the salary record compared to the position record. So the trick here is that we right now have our max pay and our min pay, our salary information, as fields on our position object. Well, they don't have to be. We can create a separate object and place those on that other object. All right? Does that make sense? Does that not make sense? Let me open it up to any questions about.
Is there any issue with the relationship because on a related list or something like that, being able to go over? Or?
No, because not really. I mean, you're not. If you don't have access to that, it's not. Are you saying like the information is somebody set it up to display in the related list or something like that? Yeah. I don't think so, but then that would just be something you. I mean, even if it did, you just wouldn't want it to show up. But yeah, you would only. You know, when you run reports, for instance, you run them in your level of access. If you don't have access to the record, you won't see it. And the same thing goes for. Let me test that one out. But you're not going to see that. You're not going to even see the record. This is one of those 90% sure's that I always hate to, because anytime I'm 90% sure, I'm 20% going to be wrong. So.
Isn't this kind of a kludgy solution anyway? Because data integrity point of view, how would you manage separate salary records?
Yeah, would you have multiple salary records?
And then how would you manage it if you deleted the position?
Yeah. So let me write down my related list test just to verify that.
We need to have a one-to-one relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, one-to-one. Very good. Boy, Murat, you are going to be happy to be in 501 class next week. And the reason is that in the Dev 501 class, what we do is we write some code. And the purpose of the code is to enforce a one-to-one relationship. Yep. So one of the things that we do in the one of the things that we do in the Apex class is we write some code to enforce a one-to-one relationship, because it's not something that you can enable declaratively within Salesforce, within our object model. So you're right, we introduced another problem, which is how do we maintain, we don't want a single position with multiple salaries. So now we're doing another fix for that. So it's something that we do, it's something that can be coded, but then maybe, I don't know, is it worth the effort or what have you? But so if this was a requirement though, and we needed to fulfill this requirement, this is a way we could do it. So, okay. All right. Any questions about this?
So even with Apex, there is no other way to do it.
Even with Apex to.
Yeah, to do the.
So you're referring back to
4.2 with any other more logical way.
With Apex, you want to only. You could one thing you could do is you could write some code that goes, okay, I'm going to do a lookup in the database, or I'm going to check the currently logged in user's ID. So I'm throwing out a little brainstorm idea here. You write some Apex code in a Visualforce controller so that when a user accesses a Visualforce page, what you do is in the code, in the controller, you access the currently logged in user's ID, and you compare that to the user ID of the hiring manager. You could also then go into the database and look up the user's manager, okay? Check to see that the currently logged in user is one of those two people. Otherwise the recruiter is, we could also check to see if the currently logged in user is has the recruiter role or something like that. So we could write some logic, and then what we could do is go, okay, if it is not one of those three people, then we do not return the data to the page. So you could definitely do something with Visualforce, a Visualforce solution to limit that access. So conditionally limit it.
Without creating another object.
Without creating another object. So in this case, what you would do is you would set up field level security, and then once again, I'm pretty much shooting from the hip here, so don't run out and architect this solution because I haven't thought it through entirely. But you would protect the data from everyone, maybe other than the recruiting managers, with field level security. But it would be your Apex code that does that check, that goes, okay, I'm going to allow people who I'm protecting it with field level security, I'm going to allow in these two situations, if the hiring manager or the hiring manager's boss, I'm going to allow them to see it, and I'm going to return it for display if they meet those criteria. So you definitely code that.
So would you just have one Visualforce page that everybody looks at the position?
You'd have a Visualforce page that either you're going to return the salary information or you're going to return null. And then you say, there's within Visualforce, we'll do this on Friday, there's an attribute called rendered, and you would set, if it's null, don't render it. If it has a value, then render it.
So you're doing it at the field level. Visualforce is operating at the field level, not at.
Oh yeah. So it's here in this case we have a page we'd be displaying, and we go, okay, am I going to display this field or not? Well, did you pass me back some data? If you did, then display it. Okay.
Yeah, we have some suggestions for the future of Salesforce.com, the future release. Instead of having checkboxes for the field level securities, if we could have expressions there, we wouldn't have so much problems.
Yeah. Not to be, we do have ideas at Salesforce.com. So that's primary mechanism that in terms of our product managers, you know, the best way, I mean, other than if you have, you know, lots of money and you're a big customer, obviously they get a lot of attention, but ideas.salesforce.com is a mechanism to provide direct feedback back to our product managers so that they can incorporate those changes into the product. Okay? So that's what I recommend. I mean, there's definitely, I'm not going to disagree. There's stuff that we can definitely improve on, and you know, we're kind of, I mean, in these exercises, we're kind of showing you, well, this, you know, people kind of assume, okay, well, I can just use this here and I can just use this here. Well, they only work in certain situations, you know, and so these exercises, they're kind of pointing out those things. So, yeah. All right. There's some lab work to do. What we'll do is we'll devote some time to lab work, and then we will, I'm going to go over some of those questions that Anu was asking about, and we'll kind of go over those. But for the rest of the day, what we'll do is we'll devote time to labs, and then we'll devote it to going over review questions. Okay? Okay, I just wanted to complete our slides, and then we can continue working on the labs and kind of go over those exercise questions. But there's a few more slides in this class. The titles of these are all which tool to use. And so here, once again, these ones are really quick. So don't have to spend too much time on these. So while filling out positions, the hiring manager wants to fill out the job responsibilities and the job description at the top of the page. The recruiter needs to see the name of the hiring manager and the status of the position first. So what feature that we talked about today would enable that to us to meet those requirements?
Page layouts.
Page layouts, exactly. Page layouts. When creating new technical positions, hiring managers should always have to fill out which certifications are required. When creating non-technical positions, such as positions in sales and finance, there is no need to see or populate the certification fields. What tool do you think would help us out there?
Record type.
Record type. Slam dunk. All right. Interviewers should never see a candidate's social security number. Which tool would you use?
Interviewers. Field level?
Field level security. Field level security. Okay. All right. So.
I had a question about the exercise.
Go for it, yeah.
It just had us remove the min and max pay fields, but wouldn't we need a page layout with them added in?
So the question is, we removed the min and max fields.
We created the object and gave it only access to the custom hiring manager and recruiter. But how are they going to see it if it's not on a form? They had us take
when
it
you create a field, one of the things that when you create that field, it prompts you in the wizard, do you want to add this to the page layout? So in that dialog, you would have added it to the page layout.
Okay, but they had us go in and take it out.
Of the position.
No, off the position.
Oh, off the position, because now it's on the salary.
Yeah.
Oh, so there's a whole new, so now there's like just one default salary.
Yeah, exactly. So the data is now on the salary object, and therefore we want to remove it from the position. Yeah. Okay. All right. So what do we do? So which feature sets the baseline level of access for an object? Who did I leave off on? Or should we just do whoever wants to jump out and do these? Org-wide default. Yeah, very good. So our org-wide defaults set a baseline level of access. So I would also accept profile. To me, profiles set a baseline level of access. If we're doing object CRUD, you could say that. If a developer wanted interviewers to see positions but never see the grade listed on a position, which tool would that developer use?
Page layout.
Field level security? Yeah. So it kind of, maybe you could say this is page layouts in the sense that if it only applied to that page layout, we could argue that, but field level security, all right. If a developer wanted to share records with a group of users that were not all in the same role, how could the developer do it without creating multiple sharing roles?
Public groups.
Create a public group. Very good. So, all right, we're nailing them. True or false? System administrators can see every record in Salesforce.
If they have that little checkbox check.
Yes, if it's the exactly. So this is true actually, and it gets back to one of those things I was looking up. So even with they can see every record regardless of what we do, even with field level security, because that's the one I tested out. Remember that? Okay. All right. So that is it for our lecture topics. So why don't we wrap up things for today? And we'll continue working on the labs, and then what we'll do is we'll just review some of those lab questions that are left over.
For more information on Salesforce.com training and certification, please visit www.salesforce.com/training.